Good morning and welcome to the Point. Late last week, Representative Cindy Gamrat from Allegan County broke her silence on an alleged extramarital affair and cover-up of that affair with fellow Representative Todd Courser. She apologized to her constituents, to the legislature, and mostly to her family.
And on a personal note, I just want to thank my family. My husband is here, Joe, and I have three children. Sorry. And they are amazing, and everybody who knows my kids know that. And they have been great. So they don't deserve what's come upon them. I take full responsibility.
With that, Representative Cindy Gamrat said what many had been thinking for the last week. The revelation that she had an extramarital affair with fellow conservative lawmaker Todd Courser has been a major topic in Lansing for weeks, and for 7 days, the talk of the state. The big question was, would she resign? Not now, she said. She still wants to serve. Representative, how do you anticipate you're going to be able to serve your constituents? You've already been asked not to come to caucus meetings because of other issues not related to this, and obviously you see the kind of attention that you're garnering here. How can you be an effective representative?
Rick, I don't think that's going to be answered today, and that's not what today is about. Today I'm just simply here to apologize.
Bad judgment. Yes, she says she's guilty. Cover up? That wasn't her idea. But on audio tapes used to develop the story and presumably recorded by then staffers, Representative Courser seems to suggest she signed off on the cover-up. And what of those tapes? Have we heard them all? Are you aware of the existence of more audio recordings that were not released?
I don't know to what extent there were audio recordings, Rick. I have no idea.
The existence of more audio tapes is a possibility, and an investigation is being conducted into the two. For now, Gamrat says she'll stay in the House of Representatives. Beyond that, there was actual work being done in Lansing this week. We talked with the Senate Vice Chair of Energy and Technology about exactly what's going on with the rewrite of Michigan's energy policy. Here's Senator John Prose. Senator, you've got a unique seat when it comes to looking at energy issues, and I know that one of those that you're looking at is a big rewrite in the way we'll deal with energy going forward here in the state, and we'll get to that. But first, let's talk about one that may be on the top of mind for a lot of people. At a time when crude oil is more plentiful in this country than we've seen perhaps in our lifetimes, at a time when a barrel of crude oil is at historic lows, at least for the recent past, we just saw another big spike and see gas go up to $3 and in some places more than $3 because something broke at a refinery somewhere. You've already had some comments about that. Give me your thoughts on where we are and what we ought to be thinking about.
Yeah, you know, I too travel the roadways in Michigan. Maybe that's another topic we have.
Absolutely.
But we are all looking at a huge spike, and that spike is something that I think really impacts our families at home. Southwest Michigan was the first to feel that pinch, and I got a call, as it turns out. I wasn't filling up, but one of my gas station owners called me. Now, they normally don't talk to me unless there's something related to a retail issue. In this case, they called and said, John, we've seen a historic spike, 13 cents overnight. I thought, wow, that seems so shocking. I just listened to a Bloomberg report that the price of a barrel of oil of sweet crude is at $43 a barrel. How is it that a decrease in the barrel price has resulted in a 13-cent increase? 16 hours later, that same gas station owner called and said, we just had a 60.1 cent increase in the wholesale price with the truck that just unloaded in my drive. That is unprecedented and needed to be looked at. That's why I called upon the Attorney General, Bill Schuette, to ask the question, is this fair? Is this appropriate? And how can the BP Whiting plant be the reason that the Midwest feels this pinch? $1 billion hit to Michigan is what we're looking at here. And to those of us who fill our cars and our vehicles, and to the friends that we want to come in and spend their dollars during these last days of vacation before our kids go back to school. It really was a shocking number, and it was unprecedented according to the retailers themselves, my gas station owners who contacted me. We felt it first in Southwest Michigan. It has cascaded across the rest of the state now.
One of the things that is a little troubling is, but this BP plant had a problem, and so their production has decreased. In some cases, it's been eliminated because of that problem. And until it's fixed, that continues to be. Other refineries have no problem, but supply and demand dictates that they can get more for their product.
That's right.
As a Republican who I suspect supports capitalism, that's part of the plan in some ways. But does it seem logical, and perhaps this is why you're asking for this investigation, that one refinery can have one problem and that can dominate the price scale for all of the rest
That's
of this?
exactly the question that I'm asking, Rick. And when I look at the supply-demand curve and the supply-demand issues, we have transportation as a part of that too. So pipeline, truck, whatever it is that we're going to utilize to get the refined gasoline to the pump, that's going to have some impact then also from the distribution side of the equation. So it's clear that there's a constraint in the manufacturing process. And my question isn't necessarily the supply-demand issues. I did okay in that class, by the way. In my estimation, though, we have to be looking at whether or not it is being handled fairly, and then ask the next question, which is, how is it that we don't have the refining capacity to be prepared for mechanical breakdowns, which I'm certain are common in manufacturing processes? And as for free market, I support the free market. Let's let the free market manage its way through the ups and downs of manufacturing failures. You know, one of my constituents asked the question, well, John, you know what? I don't pay for a recall on a vehicle that had a breakdown because they failed to make it correctly. They failed to fix it correctly, and it's caused a safety concern on my car. Instead, who eats that cost? The manufacturer eats that cost. We can't make an apples to apples comparison, but I do believe we can look at this and say, why is it we're so dependent upon one facility? And as it turns out, the governor's showing an interest in this too. The Energy Office, that Valerie Brader is the energy director for the governor, she says that 20% of all of the BP refineries' oil that gets refined into gasoline is in our marketplace in the state of Michigan. So that 20% hit in the state of Michigan. Now cascade that out amongst all the other states in the Midwest. The East and West Coasts are not feeling this pinch. From a supply-demand side of the equation, we're taking the hit for a failure of a manufacturing process.
It's an interesting conversation because as one who moved here a couple of decades ago, I was surprised by the volatility of the price of fuel here versus other places where I've been that didn't have those same constraints. And I understand and appreciate the fact that the answer is not just, well, build a new refinery, because that's a big, big dollar and cent investment,
Sure.
and I get that. But because we suffer uniquely in Michigan because of these gas prices, I'll be interested to see what, if any, kind of conclusions come out of this. I mean, the bottom line is, though, it still does come back to the market. And there's not a heck of a lot that government can do in terms of regulating that.
That's right. It is an unregulated, market-driven supply-demand equation. That is for sure. But the Attorney General has a really good shot here of working with the other Attorneys General, and I think Bill Schuette would be wise to work with the other Attorneys General in the states that surround the Great Lakes that are dependent upon the BP facility itself, and ask the question why it is that we weren't prepared for any disruption, even at a time when we have a high peak demand right now. And of course, this driving season, the summer season, is a high peak demand. One of the questions was, well, maybe it's because we are mandated by the EPA to change blends. We're in the middle of the summer blend. So we're not depleting the summer blend and moving to the winter blend. We're not at the springtime where we're depleting the winter blend and moving to a summer blend. That's no impact at all. What's true, though, too, and this actually gets to some of the energy questions as it relates to electricity, we are a peninsula state. That is a constrained issue for us when it comes to pipelines, when it comes to transmission lines. That creates another issue entirely. I just think that the Attorney General would be wise. I think Bill would be wise to look at this. Bill Schuette, I think, is going to. I think he should. And if nothing else, we can see that the manufacturers have an interest looking over their shoulder. Who else is looking out for the consumer? And that's the perfect position for our Attorney General.
And one of the problems you pointed out early on is the place that people feel it and the place where people hear it is at the retail location, and it's not the retailers that are raising the price.
That's right.
It's a wholesale pass-through, but you know the kind of grief that folks who run gas stations get when you see a 30-cent hike in a couple of days.
Absolutely, and in some cases it was 80 cents in 48 hours. I mean, that's just an extraordinary number, unprecedented, and it really does make me wonder, are we prepared for, in some ways I kind of, is it almost a too big to fail sort of situation? Do we need to be seeing some additional investment? It probably brings up a greater and maybe even broader question. When was the last time we cited a refining plant for crude oil, that whether it's from Canada or any place else in the domestic United States, the Gulf of Mexico or otherwise, when was the last time we built a refining capacity in the States itself? If we're relying upon all of this North American oil to be utilized here in North America to help our energy independence, then we ought to be insisting that the federal government give us the opportunity and the chance to grow and then ultimately refine that oil ourselves here domestically. Those are American jobs too, by the way.
You're the vice chair of Energy and Technology, and as such, you deal with a lot of energy issues, and none bigger than a rewrite of the way that we generate, use, regulate
That's right.
energy coming into our homes and businesses. And I know that you, along with Chairman Knopf and your counterparts on that committee, and as well as over in the House, are working now. As you said, the horses are past the starting gate. They're in the chute, perhaps, getting ready to go, but it still has ways to go. This is a very complex issue, and people's eyes tend to kind of gloss over when you start to talk to them, because it's about having alternative energy companies other than the big 2 or 3 come in. It is about how we produce it, what the federal government is going to say about the way we can produce energy in the state, all of those issues. So try to explain it to somebody like me who doesn't deal with it every day like you do.
Right. So Senator Knopf, Mike Knopf of the Battle Creek area, of course, is chairman of the Energy and Technology Committee. I serve as his vice chair. Now, over a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, in fact, we began the process of reviewing the 2008 Energy Act. That Energy Act expires at the end of 2015. So that sets the stage for a rewrite because things change. What we thought might happen in 2008, some of those things came true. Some things didn't necessarily come true. Other things are coming from the federal government with the Clean Power Plan that the Obama administration is pushing with the EPA. In fact, just last week, the president had a major speech on the Clean Power Plan. Is causing a complete change in direction for the baseload generation, or the reliability generation that we have. Generally, it's produced by the big 3, DTE, CMS, or Consumers Energy, and American Electric Power, Indiana, Michigan Power. That power mix is what is called our reliability mix. We want to make sure that the lights turn on when we walk in the room, that our computer can turn on, our cell phones can get charged, and we don't have to worry about it. And then if a big storm comes by, is it reliable? Will it still be there? If we have big spikes in the amount of energy that's being used, do we have enough available so that we don't have brownouts like what we saw in the California situation? So there are really very big issues at play, but the 3 things we're trying to focus on is it affordable, is it reliable, and are we managing through the changes at the federal level requiring clean power?
More with Senator Prose coming up. To the Point. Welcome back to the Point. How we use energy, how we produce energy, how we regulate energy. It's a big deal in the state of Michigan, and right now the legislature is trying to figure out what our policy going forward will be. We are talking with the Vice Chairman of Energy and Technology, Senator John Prose. This Clean Power Initiative, as I understand it, will put a number of coal burning, electricity producing plants out of business sooner rather than later. And in Michigan, that's going to create, or could create, a supply problem, couldn't it?
Absolutely. There is some concern, although there isn't a great concern right now from those who look at the marketplace as a whole. They see in the future a need for more capacity. But today, even with some of the changes that the Obama administration is pursuing, and the likelihood of us taking 9 coal plants offline, which is baseload generation, which is the kind of generation we want to be able to make sure that our lights do turn on. As those come offline, we're going to have to think about how we replace it. And in particular, how we then grow beyond when the capacity needs increase. And if your listeners and viewers look at it this way, we hope that we have to build new power plants. Why do we hope that? Because we hope that we have new manufacturing. We hope that we have more jobs available for Michigan residents. We hope that we keep our kids in Michigan so that they can fill those jobs that are growing in the state. And we hope also that economic growth leads to us needing to build new generation. So if the federal government says we're shutting down coal, which we're about 62, 63% dependent upon coal today, we were as high as 76, 78% just a few years ago, we're going to have to find ways to replace that coal.
And what do we replace it with? I mean, first of all, when you talk about you hope you have to build these, obviously that's good if the economy is good, but that's also enormously expensive. And what replaces coal? Is it natural gas? We haven't built a nuclear plant for eons.
And it's an incredible cost to build a nuclear plant. But it's clean, and the only emission is water vapor.
Except for the
high-level nuclear waste that is left over. Exactly. So I represent the southwest corner of the state, and of course I have the Cook DC Cook nuclear power plant. We're storing the high-level nuclear waste right now on the shores of Lake Michigan, and the federal government has yet to take possession of that as they said they would in the 1982 Act, which is why I've pursued the Yucca Mountain resolutions in the Senate and in the House when I was in the House of Representatives to insist that the federal government take possession of that. But the question that you ask is, what do we do about the energy power mix today? The governor's plan and proposal is that we focus on energy waste reduction. That is a lot of the energy efficiency work that the 2008 Act talked about. How do we make our homes more efficient? How do we utilize the power that we have to less of a degree? After all, the cheapest form of energy is the energy you don't use, right? So if we look to the Act itself, we're encouraging alternative uses of energy. We in fact open the doors for green power so that if you, a consumer, wants to have green power as a part of your mix, and you're willing to pay that premium cost because it isn't as inexpensive as current baseload generation, you are willing to do so, we'll let you do it up to 100% of your home's usage. In doing so, it helps to send market signals then to those that are building generation and power to seek other alternative green power sources. So what those alternative green power sources can be solar, it can be wind. There's some new opportunities in the reestablishment of some hydro. We're just not as blessed as say, the northwest of the United States. 70% of the baseload power in Oregon comes from what? Hydro.
The Columbia River.
The Columbia River. It's unbelievable the amount of power that they produce from the river itself. We have some capability in that area, but not nearly enough to fill all of that need or that load need. So there's a great deal of debate and discussion about what the right path is forward. But one of the things that I think is really interesting when you look at the 2008 Act is that it jump-started some green energies. Not anybody in the state of Michigan has failed to see some of the new wind turbines that are out there, Rick. And that is showing significant promise towards filling some of that clean power need that we have. Solar is growing, but solar continues to be a technology that seems to be working at half the cost if it's a mass scale project. The rooftop solar doesn't do quite as well in terms of the cost factor and the payback factor. So what we're trying to say is that if the new industries can stand up without being subsidized by your neighbor, without being paid for by an energy efficiency line item on your bill or what have you, and that's what the 2008 Act had, we're repealing a lot of those sections, and instead we're saying now's the time for this uncertain marketplace because of the federal regulatory structure, live on its own, stand on its own, succeed or fail on its own, but make sure that we seek those energy waste reductions that the governor is calling for, and that we make sure that it is reliable and affordable at the end of the day.
In the pursuit of good policy, it's impossible to avoid politics. And you go back to that 2008 agreement, and that was a mandate to get to a particular amount of renewables or alternative sources of energy by this year, which I think as a technical matter has been met. The governor talked about upping that ante. But if what I'm hearing is accurate, you aren't necessarily talking about mandates. You're talking about market forces. If I want to step up to the plate as a consumer and say, yeah, that's what I want,
absolutely,
I'm going to bear the cost. But if you don't want to, you won't. And that's then how we might get to more renewable or alternative sources. So are you saying there won't be any mandates?
No, the mandate is repealed. As we said, the horses have just left the chute in the Senate version of the bill. So as we work our way through in a very open forum, all folks have been at the table in the review back to 2008, all the way with the last 2 years worth of review of it. Folks on all sides of the issue have had a chance to talk about this in a real bipartisan way. That's the beauty of this committee. It really is not a partisan R or D committee. We were looking at all of those particular alternatives and saying, what is the best direction for the market forces to align itself with need? The fact of the matter is that the Obama administration is requiring us to have clean power and green power as a part of that mix. That will be satisfied both in a regulatory way as well as the consumers who will give the market signal. The market signal that will say, boy, I'll tell you what, the Grand Rapids community, the Southwest Michigan community, name a particular region, has seen an uptick of 3 to 5% of folks who would like clean green power as a part of their energy mix. They're willing to pay a premium for that. That particular number gives a market signal to those that are building new generation to seek new and cleaner power.
One of the provisions in the '08 Act is, and I'm doing this from memory, but there was a carve out, if you will, or there was an ability for a percentage of energy to be delivered by something other than those big three that you talked about. It's 10%?
10%, that's correct, yes.
In the neighborhood. That has been controversial because some have said, you know what, you've got these big companies, they have to have a reliable consumer base to know what to build, how much to spend, how much to invest, and they have to have a guarantee that what they produce is going to be used, and there are all of these different factors. Right. And this going out and cutting your own deal with a smaller company destabilizes that. The people who use that 10% say, wait a minute, not so fast. We're schools, we're manufacturers, we're some individuals, but we're saving money. We cut a good deal with a company that's reliable, and we want those savings. What's going to happen to that?
They get to keep it. Plain and simple. They get to keep what they have. And in fact, those who would like to come into the program have the opportunity to do so, either leave or come into the program. So when there's an opening, it will allow somebody to come back in. But here's the key. The key is that destabilization, as you characterized it, would be very difficult for the incumbents, the major providers that are already iron in the ground in the state of Michigan, not the resellers or the folks who come in, take some of that power and resell it to you at less of a cost. Instead, those folks will not be required to supply you that power for 3 years. So the alternative energy suppliers will be required to say, yes, we will supply that power to you and your business, or you and your manufacturing, or you as a consumer, a customer right there at your home. We will be able to carry that load for at least 3 years. So that guarantee remains. That gives the planning capability of the incumbents the right market signals to know how much capacity they need to build. If you leave, you can't come back. So if you're an alternative energy user today, if you choose to leave, you can't come back in because the slot's going to be filled. And then at some point in time, once the marketplace changes in price structure and the price signals change, right now the reason this works is because the gas prices are at such a low level that they're able to resell that back to you at not a premium, but at a discount. But if gas prices go up above the $3 and $4 mark where it is today in terms of natural gas, up to the $10, $11, and $12 mark where it has been in the past, guess where those folks go? They come back to the regulated utility in the state of Michigan, and they may or may not be able to hold that capacity to be able to provide that to you as a manufacturer, or a school, or otherwise. So what we say is, absolutely, keep what you have. You're grandfathered in. But if you choose to leave, you can't just be flipping back and forth between the regulated entity and the unregulated entity.
We're going to run out of time before we can fully discuss that, because there are going to be people say, wait a minute, that creates a huge disincentive for me to move out of this regulated group, because there's that fear factor that if something happens badly over here, I don't have any power coming into my house.
And that just identified the problem that the incumbents have when looking out at their portfolio and saying, how are we going to build enough generation to take care of the load need as we take coal down, increase green power, and have more requirements from the federal government to satisfy those things. They need to have the market signals that give them the chance to be able to go to investors on Wall Street as the regulated utility to build the kind of capacity that's necessary to keep reliability for our customers in Michigan.
Our thanks to Senator Prose. We're back with more To the Point in just a moment. Over in the House of Representatives, we're told a roads deal may be close, but don't hold your breath. In the Senate, as we've talked about this morning, energy and other issues are being dealt with. And of course, there's that investigation into those two representatives we referenced at the top of the show. Those are all things that we'll be following and keeping you updated on as you join us every Sunday morning at 10 o'clock right here on Wood TV 8 for To the Point.